Welcome to the Photobooth podcast. My name is Nicole, owner of Own the Mama Booth and Own Your Mama Co. And I'm here with Catalina of Modern Photo Booth, Modern Activations, and Photo Booth Mastery. Welcome, Kat. So glad to have you back on the pod.
Always love it.
Yeah.
All right. We have a good one today too, right?
I know. I'm really excited about this one. We can talk about this topic pretty much every episode if you wanted to, honestly. We can create hundreds of topics or podcasts about this, but we're talking about pricing, and not just generally pricing, a little bit more specific to photo booth owners. So you've created a whole digital course about pricing based on your experience in the industry. So why don't you just jump right in and talk about that?
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, we could spend days doing this. But I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years now, right? And in past lives before that, I was in the event industry as well. And this is the biggest struggle, regardless of what kind of business you run, whether it's a photo booth, photography, DJ, any service-based business is going to run into issues because it's not a tangible product, right? There's the three main things that I find people struggle with is one, understanding their own value. Two, really understanding how to price a service business versus a commodity business. And I'll go into that in a minute. But then the other thing too is how do you structure pricing for service, right? So traditionally, if you have a product, it's like, okay, it costs me X amount of dollars to make the product plus whatever operating expenses you have plus profit. And boom, there's your price, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that with a service-based business because it's so much harder to figure out what your costs are. But it starts with the value part of things, right? Because you a lot of times are the service. Like your ideas, your talent, that is part of what essentially is the base price that you have to go off of, right? And the first thing that I always try to drive home with people when we're talking about pricing is understanding the value that you bring or that your business brings. And I'll talk specifically about photo booth owners here because I feel like as a industry as a whole, we do the worst job at showing off our value, which is why so many people charge so little, right?
Yeah.
And I do this exercise in my course where I make people write a resume as if they were applying for a job that required all of their skills, right? And I have them list out every single skill that they have as a photo booth owner. And I want it to be very specific to photo booths. So like, hey, I know how to program Salsa app. Like, guess what? You had to learn how to do it. Mind you, it's quite one of the more simple softwares. You still had to learn how to do that. And think about the first time you opened any photo booth app. Did you go, oh yeah, I know how to do this? No, you had to learn it, you know?
Yeah.
You spent hours on support sites or onboardings, playing around with it, you know, doing different kinds of events. And all of those hours count towards value. Because let me tell you, when we text a photo to people, the shock and awe on their face, they're like, well, you can text it to me right now. And it prints. And it's like, for us, it's so normal. And to them, their mind was just blown that we did this, right? So listing out absolutely everything that you know how to do as a photo booth owner. And every time you learn a new skill, update your resume, right? Because this is going to remind you how much value you bring. And as you expand your business and bring people on, those are also things that you could add to your resume. It's like, hey, you hired an employee. Guess what? Now I can be in 2 places at one time. You have an event on the same day in 2 different places. I can do that. That is a value, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first exercise that I really like to do, just to validate that. That way you are a bit more confident in your pricing when you understand the value that you bring. The next thing, though, is understanding what a commodity versus a service is.
Yes, I want to hear this.
So commodity is, you know, something, I always like to use the like Kleenex, right? You only need a Kleenex when you need a Kleenex. And like normally, and Kleenex is obviously a tissue, not just Kleenex brand. But
Yeah.
if you go to Walmart, let's say, because you need tissues, and you go to the tissue section, most people are just going to pick up the thing that's the cheapest, right? Because it's a
Right.
commodity. You don't necessarily, unless you have extreme allergies, you're probably not caring how much moisturizer there is in this tissue. You just need a tissue.
Yeah.
And so the commodity is just something that is out there, and people just buy it because it's a necessity at that exact moment. They don't really care about the bells and whistles to it. Whereas a service business has bells and whistles and really only talks to one person, right? So, like, again, someone who has, like, if Kleenex has super moisturizing Kleenex and it's really soft on your nose and it's not going to like create all that redness and chafiness around your nose because you're blowing your nose all the time, it's probably going to advertise to people with allergies and be like, hey, during allergy season, use our Kleenexes because they're not going to make your nose bleed and look red and chafy, right?
Yeah.
So they're now targeting a different target audience altogether that has a very specific pain point, right? And this is where services
Ah.
need to be. You need to understand your target audience and what is their main pain point, and just only market to that instead of
Mm.
marketing to everyone in the commodity side of things. And the commodity side is where you see those people who are charging sub $1,000 for a rental and are price matching, right? Because
Yep.
they serve everyone and anyone. They don't have an ideal target market. Their ideal target market is someone who's doing an event,
Everyone. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. This is a mistake we all make. And it's okay to make that mistake. What it's not okay is to stay there,
Yeah.
right? You need to understand that and be like, okay, I'm going to be better. I'm going to start focusing. And that's how you grow as a business. You start
Yep.
to focus your services, right? Like, hey, I actually hate doing weddings, let's say. You don't have to do weddings. I mean, I love
Yeah.
doing weddings, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but you don't have to, right? Maybe your
Mm-hmm.
thing is, only doing weddings. There are some companies that only do weddings and they charge a premium, you
Yeah.
know? And a lot of people think I'm expensive because we charge, I think our average right now is around 2,800 actually for a 3 hour. It's gone up quite a bit from previous
Wow.
years. I know a photo booth company who's very active in the group. I'm not going to call them out. They charge $20,000 minimum for an event. Doesn't matter what event.
Wow.
$20,000. Their product's beautiful, but it's very specific,
Wow.
right? They're a service.
Yeah.
They are not a
Yeah.
commodity. So
Oh, that's
that's
so interesting.
and
That's
that's the
so,
biggest thing.
yeah. No, that's so good. I mean, I can literally say, oh yeah, that was for sure me. Like when I first started my business, I was like, yeah, I don't know who my target market is. I want anyone. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
get paid, you know? So I tried every kind of event possible and was trying to grab at but you're so right. As soon as you do that, you are just racing to the bottom because then
Yeah.
everyone's just competing on price. You're not competing on anything specific and of value.
But then
And
you
as soon,
changed, right?
oh
You
yeah,
you you
absolutely.
saw, and so you
Yep.
built. You're no, I know your business. You're not a commodity, right?
Yeah,
You've expanded and you saw and you changed your business to the point where you're now a service, and you're
for
very
sure.
clear on who you serve. And I think we can always refine. I'm constantly
Yeah.
refining myself.
Oh
Like
yeah.
every year I go back and I look and be like, okay, what did we learn this year? And what do we really like doing? What do we hate doing? What do we want to do more
Hmm.
of? And we refine our offering and our service and our target and all of that every single year, which is why we can charge what we charge because we're going
Yeah.
after the right people.
Yeah.
So if we go into now actually pricing a service, actually one more point to that, which a lot of people make this mistake as well, is they set their prices based on the market, right? They're like, oh,
Mm.
my market can only sustain this. Sure, why don't you just go find another market? You want
Yeah.
to charge more? There's a market that will do that. Like
Yeah.
my market doesn't sustain my prices. Like where I live as a whole, if we were to do a market analysis and I look at comparables of photo booth companies, I would be like, okay, I need to charge like a third of what I charge. But what
Wow.
I decided is I don't want to go after the 80%. I want the 20%. I'm probably now in the 5%.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you find your market, you set your prices and you find the market that's willing to pay it, not the other way around.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of? I'm sure you've heard this too, but the concept of like the bread aisle and how there's so many different types of bread in the bread aisle, like so many options. And the prices also vary. You can get like sprouted organic bread and it's going to cost you like $10 for a loaf of bread. It's the same idea. It's still bread. It's all the same bread, but it's very specific. And there's going to be somebody who wants that specific bread because it fits them, their lifestyle, their needs the best. And so that's always a helpful concept for some people sometimes. And it was helpful for me when I was starting. I was like, oh, okay, you're right. Like, yeah, we don't have to just be competing on the fact that we're all bread or whatever. We're all photo booth businesses. We can have very specific needs that we help meet, you know? So yeah, very, very insightful.
And I will say, because a lot of people are like, well, don't we need commodity businesses? Absolutely. And there is a
Yeah.
way that you can be a commodity business, right? If you want to serve the masses and you really want to be a photo booth that will be at every single event, there's a way to do that. And you can be cost effective, but the reality of that is going to be that you're probably going to be a drop-off company and you're probably going to only do iPad booths, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. You could probably make a killing doing just drop-offs, just doing iPad booths, because all you do is you drive around the city, you drop them off, you drive around the city and you come back. So your costs are low. You can be a little bit more cost effective, right? To be in serving that level of people or that group of people. So that can be done if you decide that that's the business that you want to have. But if you want to have a business that can scale and be a bit more, charge a bit more money, then you need to look at being very niche and very service based.
Well, even just fulfilling, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the whole reason why I even got into the industry was because I just love creating memories and being a part of that experience with my clients and helping provide that. And you don't necessarily get that with a drop off booth. If I'm just driving in my car all day long, dropping photo booths off, I don't get to have that whole purpose and like the soul of what my business is. So that's also helpful too in deciding what route you want to go. You know, like, do you want to do that? Then you got to be okay with not having that experience and not providing that certain thing for your clients. So yeah, that's
That's
super
very
interesting.
true. All things to consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then lastly is the conundrum of how do you price something that's not tangible, that people don't understand the value of? Like, how many times has someone been like, oh, well, my budget's this, can you match it? It's like, do you go into a store and say,
Yeah.
I want this $2,000 thing, but I only have $1,000. What can you do? Nothing.
Yeah.
I can show you the door
Sorry.
and you can
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
and go find the other $1,000 before you come back. You know, so when it comes to pricing a service, you need to take into a consideration a lot of things. And again, another big mistake that I see is operating costs are never taken into consideration. It's hard to figure out what your operating costs are per booth or per event. So what I like to do is I lump in all my operating costs for the year. This is website, CRM system, payment collection system, whatever has a monthly subscription and I need to pay in order to run my business becomes part of an expense. And these are my fixed expenses that I know are going to happen every year, like my website hosting, all of that kind of stuff. It goes into my operating costs. And if you are new to the industry, then I want you to say, hey, I'm going to do 10 events this year. So you take all your operating costs and you divide that by 10. If you do more events, great. Your operating costs just went down. You're making more money. If you do less events, though, then you're making less money, right? But at least
Yeah.
it's a starting off point. And every year, you can either go based off of your previous year or whatever you are going to do, like whatever your goal is for the next year. It's usually best to go based on previous years, right? Because at least if you do more events, it's cheaper. Whereas
Yeah.
versus the other way around, if you have a stretch goal of like, hey, I'm going to double my events, great that you're trying to do that. Is it going to really happen? I don't know, and then at the end of the year, you're not really calculating things properly. So let's call that number $100. right?
Yeah.
$100 of every event is going to go into supporting the operating systems of your photo booth business. Then you need to actually factor in your own time. But what a lot of people do is they say, hey, I'm happy making $100 for this event, right? And they don't take into consideration it took X number of hours to talk to the person by email, X number of hours to set up the event, X number of hours to pack the kit, do the actual event, unpack the kit, send whatever else you need to after the event. So they're thinking, oh, this 3-hour event, I made $100. It's like, you did not make $100 because that 3-hour event was actually, like 10 hours and you made $10 an hour before taxes.
That's right. That's painful.
Yeah. So you need to calculate how many hours it takes you to do an event and then give yourself a salary. But more importantly, what would it cost you to hire someone to do that for you?
Yeah.
Because unless you ever if you plan on running this business yourself for the rest of your life, great. But you're probably going to want to hire someone to do your events eventually. And you want to make sure that you have the money to do that. So once you figured out your operating costs and then your time, then you need to actually start looking at the value that you bring to people, right? The value that certain things bring to your client. And this is going to be different for everyone, depending on what your business does, right? Your value, though, that you bring is going to be essentially what your profit portion of it is. So you need to have your base, you need to add your value, and then your profit. And so that's how you really need to build a service-based pricing model, which there's a lot to go in here. Honestly, like I could spend days teaching this and having examples of how to do it, but created a guide that you guys can download so that you can try and really understand your pricing. Take a look at how you're actually structuring your stuff, because a lot of people, what they do is they're like, oh, everyone in my area is charging $500, $600, $700 for their packages, so I'm going to have $500, $600, $700. Do you know if that's even profitable for you? Like, have you really looked at the numbers? So download this guide. It's going to go through everything for you, step by step, help you figure out, A, is your pricing profitable? B, if not, what can you do to change it? Or how do you really understand your pricing so that when somebody comes back to you and says, hey, are you able to like do this price match? You're going to be like, no, I can't. You know why? Operating costs, employee costs, my time, my value, everything I'm bringing to you. The fact that you don't need to go buy a photo booth, learn how to do it, and then try to do the event is priceless. I actually had someone, it happens quite, not super often, but recently, we were going to do an event for them and they ghosted us. They just, out of nowhere, they left. And then a week before their event, they came back and they're like, so I bought a photo booth and it turns out that I don't have enough time to learn how to use this thing. So now I need you again. But the kicker was that they undercut our pricing, obviously. And they sold the client on a photo booth that they can no longer deliver. And so then they wanted us to cut our prices because of what they had done. And and I was like, that's not how this works, right? You're coming to me because I have the expertise, which you've now learned, unfortunately, the hard way, as to why we charge what we charge, And so that was a really interesting realization for me to have gone, like I wasn't upset about the situation, because it created some validity to me once again about like how important it is, the knowledge that we have as photo booth owners, the expertise that we have as photo booth owners, and that our value is there. So please make sure your pricing is aligned and that you're actually making money. You're in a business. Part of it is to make money. It's not to have fun all the time.
Exactly. This is so important. And again, like we said, there's so much to go into this. Like this is really like the tip of the iceberg, but just setting this standard for your business is going to be so important as you grow. And so this guide is going to be really, really helpful for you, how to price your photo booth. It's linked below, linked up in the cards above. So please make sure you click that and download it. It's free, no strings attached. Check it out. And thank you, Kat, so much for your expertise on this topic. I am sure we will talk more about pricing in the future, but this is, I think, is a really, really great start. So thank you again for joining us today.
I love talking about pricing. So anytime you let me know. We'll talk to you on the next one.
Yes. See you next time.